Shut up and sit down.
Hello and welcome to Thinking Out Loud. I am your host, Sam Bradley. Today we're joined by a regular guest, Toby Rainbird-Webb. How you doing, man?
Yeah, good, man, yeah.
Good,
serious.
Cool. Yeah,
very serious.
It's not really for the faint of heart, this one, because we usually have Toby on to talk about some light-hearted stuff, but we're actually going to be talking about Toby's work. He's an artist and he's a filmmaker, and he recently shelved a project about a whole load of stuff, but I'm not going to talk for Toby. What was your film going to be about?
Well, it was really centering around the incident at Haut de la Garenne in the Channel Islands in Jersey.
Which is what?
It was a historical child abuse case that which had a lot of connections with a lot of black magic at points with the Beast of Jersey, which is another character who abused children during
the 19th... He was a serial killer amongst other things.
Serial child molester during the 1960s and 70s, and it was very much about these kind of atrocities that go on in a small community. And shelving it was, after months of research, it's a hard thing to do, but it's a hard subject. I mean, how do you deal with all this immense amount of information regarding people's tragedies?
Because a lot of the victims, I guess, it wasn't that long ago, was it? It was the 1960s, 1970s. A lot of this stuff sort of kicked off. So a lot of those victims, you have to surmise, are still alive, I guess.
Yeah,
still among us.
And their families, and it's certainly in a community like Jersey, it's still very, it's still very there. It's kind of like a thing that is not very often talked about, but is very present. I mean, with it being so recent.
Why is that? Why is it such a present thing? Because you and I have talked about this extensively off air. One of the reasons you're on, obviously. But for those who don't know, what is it specifically about Jersey that seems to attract this kind of thing?
I think it's in part to do with the fact that we don't have a child.
You're from Jersey, sorry. I should mention you were born and raised there.
Yeah, I was born and raised there, and I think a lot of it is to do with when it's such a small community and there's people who are in very high positions, and they basically, if there is some kind of atrocity that is followed up by a high member of the community, then it's usually covered up as a result of not wanting to
upset the balance. Yeah,
upset the balance, and it's very much to do with balance, and it's very much to do with promoting the island. It was a tourist island during the 1960s and 70s, and that collapsed during the 1990s.
Because of this or because of other stuff?
Generally because of most people want to go abroad, not Jersey.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
And I think a lot of it is to do with when you live in such a small community, it's very close, and and there's a lot of superstition there, and there's a lot of carry on and get on with it, and we don't talk about it, and I think that is quite a dangerous mentality that is kind of festered.
Especially with this kind of thing, because there's a lot of reports and a lot of these allegations, and they are allegations, we have to say that, they are allegations about high-ranking, not just, Mr. and Mrs. Jones that run the village fair, people, ex-prime ministers, have been drawn into sex abuse scandals surrounding that kids' home that you mentioned earlier. Was it Ted Heath, I think, allegedly?
Yeah,
he has been accused of...
Was it the Morning Mist was his boat? He would go down, and there's connections with the Sea Cadets and St. John's Ambulance. So it's very... it's within all these small institutes that are there to protect children or certainly to... certainly vulnerable children. You bring them out, and in fact, they're the ones who are kind of really, really exposed to this stuff.
And it's poignant as well because Jimmy Savile
was involved.
Was very heavily involved, allegedly. Ugh.
I mean, we from the notes we have on it, there's been 4 allegations given to the police about Jimmy Savile. One of them they took seriously, but I don't know if they followed up on it. It's one of these things where it disappears off, and I think we have to remember as well in the Channel Islands, and sure some people know there's a lot of wealth knocks around there, and so
Mm-hmm. Isn't it a tax haven?
It is a tax haven, yeah. So
Guernsey more than Jersey.
Jersey more than Guernsey. So
wow,
Jersey
okay.
is it's one of the world's big tax havens, and as a result, there's a lot of wealth there, and there's a lot of covering up to kind of.
There's a lot of wealth to cover up.
Yeah, and this is why 1960s and 70s you have a lot of celebrities and a lot of politicians who are now connected with all of these historical abuse cases.
That is so nuts. It seems to have come out a lot recently, and it's just like that one thread, and it links to something else and something else and someone. It's like everyone was, if the news is to believe, everyone was into this.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Obviously, that's not the case. I'm not saying that
No,
every popular celebrity from the 60s was a sex offender, but there's a lot of notable people that have been allegedly accused of being into this and abusing power and abusing wealth.
And it's figures who were actually there as representatives of childhood, like Jimmy Savile and Rolf Harris. He's not in any way connected to this, but there is a kind of a big thing in which people who were seen to be these kind of charitable and loving characters were in fact very kind of seedy and sinister figures for children.
You couldn't write it.
No.
Jimmy Savile, this beloved children's entertainer, would turn out to be such an absolute vile, vicious character, like a real predatory sex offender. And there's we're not going to get in any trouble for saying that. He was an absolute piece of work, and he plied his trade, if we're to be believed, in the BBC and this what was the name of that kid's home again?
Haut de la Garenne.
Haut de la Garenne.
I mean, he denied any during his lifetime. He denied any kind of. He was a regular visitor to Jersey
because he did all charity work. He must have come
he
there
did.
to do charity
work. In fact,
work.
my gran worked at one of the entertainment centres in Jersey, and he regularly visited, and he regularly visited children's homes and youth clubs, and he's denied in his lifetime. This is. This is before all the allegations came out, because when he died they did. He denied being at some of these events, and yet there's photographic evidence of it.
Oh, what? So he said in his lifetime, not that I wasn't there. Not that I wasn't interviewing with kids. He said, no, I was never there. And
there's photographs of Jimmy Savile.
And yet it was all covered up in his lifetime.
Yeah.
These photographs were just buried among, whatever else.
Well, he was a very clever man with words. If you see a lot of the Lou Ferrou documentary.
Did you see the follow-up they did recently? Last year, I think it was. He didn't. I mean, Louis Theroux is a great journalist, like one of the top 10 certainly of our lifetime. Do you know what I mean? Like
he is
filmmakers in his field, and he didn't have a clue. Or he said that he had a clue. He said that he had a little inkling, and that's kind of why he did the first show back in the 90s, I think it was. But didn't slip.
No.
Once. Remember that when they're...
that was a very...
He slipped once, but not even into the child abuse thing. He just slipped, the mask slipped a little bit.
The mask of his kind of happy, childlike persona.
Yeah, so weird.
Well, and back to the point about art. Art is one of those things where you kind of... It's a platform to explore these issues in our society, and I think they should be tackled. No, I don't think... I haven't continued following this project because of that. I think it's partly to do with the fact that this is, one, it's very new stuff, and two, it's really hard as a young artist to handle a lot of
for sure.
a lot of people's trauma and try and do it justice, because... So
you're going to come back to this maybe 10 years? You think you're going to return?
Well, it could be a few months. I'm not sure. I think it's one of those things where I need to take a little bit of a put on the burner, but it's it's a really important subject to approach, but I want to do it justice. I don't want to make a commodity out of it.
Did it make it easier or more difficult because you're from there, and you've obviously told me tales of, I walked down this street where so and so, this happened, and I did this, and that's just down the road from where that happened, and we were looking on the Facebook right before we started recording, and I found the picture that you can see on the Facebook page of this bay, and I just Googled Jersey because I wanted something relevant, and you said, oh no, that's just down the road from where
Haut de la Garenne
Haut de la Garenne is just over the house. Shit.
I mean, well, it's a beautiful place to grow up, and that's, I don't want to in any way knock Jersey.
No, of course not.
But there is a kind of, when I grew up, there was this kind of boogeyman, which was the Beast of Jersey. Yeah. And, I mean, he wasn't a boogeyman in the sense that he existed and was present like he was from my parents' generation.
Because the Beast of Jersey He was a real guy. He was
a real guy who dressed in a mask and a wig and studied Haut, and he went out and he tortured and molested children and took them from their homes, and he did it for 11 years without being caught. And
he was just a guy in the community.
Just a guy in the community, and I think that those kind of stories really kind of open your imagination as a child of all these kind of, and then you start searching when you become older of all these kind of things under the surface, and also, I mean, doing a project like this, justice as an artist, it's really hard to when a lot of these people haven't received justice.
Yeah.
You know, the Beast of Jersey, for example, as a figure, he was put in prison for I think 30 years, and he lived through it, and he came back to the island. And
whoa, hang on, because I had no recollection of this. He lived through his prison sentence. He moved back to the island, and everyone presumably knew it was him.
Yeah.
And is he still alive now?
He died, I think, the late 90s.
Right.
But he had to move to the Isle of, I think it was the Isle of Wight or the Isle of Man, because there was such an uproar at home.
No shit.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to talk about in regards to the Beast of Jersey and Haut de la Garenne, and there are loose connections.
Were they involved? Did he have any connection to the kids' home, or is it just a horrible coincidence that they're both on the same island?
From what I understand, is he was very involved in children's homes at the time. His wife and his mother-in-law owned La Preference, which was a children's home, which reported later from victims that he had been wearing a mask and standing over them while they were asleep. And
fuck.
But he, I think there's a photograph of him dressed as Father Christmas at Haut de la Garenne one year.
What, like for or as part of
they knew him as Uncle Ted at these events and children's homes.
And he used to play Father Christmas for them as a thing at Christmas.
Yeah, and there's a photo of him dressed as Father Christmas, and it's sad. I mean, no one suspected him. I mean, there was times where, I mean, we were discussing it before, and it was certainly in the book which his wife wrote. His wife wrote this, just so people know. His wife wrote a book about his crimes just after he'd been convicted in the 1970s.
Did she know anything?
No, and this is a lot of this book is kind of defending her position, I think, in a way. Is saying, like, I
genuinely didn't know anything.
Yeah, and I think it's a little bit, I don't want to kind of in any way implicate any kind of involvement, but it's a very strange thing to kind of suddenly release a book about your husband's atrocities.
But they had that with, there was a serial killer in America in the 80s, I think it was, called the BTK killer. Mm-hmm. BTK stands for what he did. He used to bind them, torture them, kill them. BTK. Sounds a lot like your man, the Beast of Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
He was this pillar of the community. Drove little old women to church on Sundays, and had a wife, had a family, and she didn't know a jot. He would just go out to do charity work.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes he was doing charity work, and sometimes he wasn't. And then he went under for like 10 years and then came back. And when he came back, they caught him. But yeah, I mean, I can believe it. I can believe that it's possible. I can totally believe that if all these sex abusers and sex offenders can go off the register for decades at a time, yeah, for real, I can believe that she didn't.
And we have no sex offenders register in the Channel Islands.
What the fuck?
Yeah, and
but it's part of the UK, so does that?
We're in a weird position where we have. We're self-governed. We have our own states government, so we have honorary police as well, which are, unlike the community officers in the UK, they have a lot more power than the states police, or they certainly did in the 1960s and 70s. I think the states police couldn't arrest people unless an honorary policeman turned up, who was usually connected with other members of the community. And this is the thing is the Beast of Jersey's actual name was Ted Pays. I can't.
Pays. Yeah, I remember.
His Gerriere name is Paisnell or Parnell. I think is the.
It's a weird. Yeah, it's a weird.
It's it's an old Norse dialect of the Channel Islands. We won't get into it, but yeah, I mean, he was caught snooping around someone's garden in his socks, trying to peer through their window, and he was.
Is that how they caught him?
No, this is during all of these
How
cases,
long did he kill for? Sorry, let's just get that.
I need to specify that he didn't kill anyone.
Oh, right.
He was he would break into people's houses. He would torture and rape them, or he would generally pick on. Yeah, drag them off into fields, and he would generally pick on small girls and boys, and on occasion he would try and pick up women waiting for the bus and drag them into his car and try and rape them. And this went on for quite a while. And
how long? Like
11 years.
11 years
for the police to not catch him, and he was caught by chance for a speeding offence. He had stolen a car, and the police followed him, and then he, put up the speed on, it's a 40 mile an hour zone,
right.
max. It was a police chase in an old car, and
did he have someone in the back of the car?
No, he had his. When the police checked the car, they found his mask, and they found him wearing his beast outfit, which was the studded jacket. And
Jesus,
this is before slasher films. We were saying before.
Yeah.
This is very scary stuff. Imagine someone breaking into your house in a rubber mask, or what looks like a rubber mask, certainly, and this horrible wig. I mean, that's the kind of image I had as a child. Was from
that's.
It's really frightening.
That is so scary.
But
even as an adult, that's like I can totally now see. You could just not say anything else. Producer Lawrence just flashed up a picture. We can link to it in the description when we put this up.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
But
more terrifying that he didn't kill anybody. Because in a way, he drags people off, he rapes them, he kills them. That kind of.
He threatened it a lot, though. He would threaten that he would kill them a lot, and this is when I say there is no confirmed killings. There was a few unsolved murders during the 1960s and 70s, and there's in fact a man who is pleaded to have. He was imprisoned for 32 years for the murder of his sister, who was a 10-year-old girl who was sexually assaulted and stabbed to death. He's now looking to. At the time, there was no DNA way of checking DNA evidence. He's trying to get that passed through, so he can, because he suspects it was the Beast of Jersey who was in fact the culprit behind his sister's murder.
That's so terrifying.
I mean, as I was saying before, he was caught in someone's garden, and the honorary police turned up and just kind of sent him on his merry way.
What you doing, Crazy Ted?
Yeah, what you doing, man?
Whoa.
Because he was quite a quiet man. I'm guessing he was, from what his wife says, he was very well read, and a bit eccentric.
It sounds like the guy they based some of Hannibal Lecter on, is a guy called Ed Gein, in America, and these women were going missing, and he was just crazy old Ed. He'd be out shoveling the snow, and the police would come up and say, "Oh, what you doing, Ed?" And he'd go, "Oh, you're looking for them girls? I got them up in the house." And they'd, "Oh, Ed."
Yeah.
And he fucking did have them up at the house. He fucking skinned him. And he's the guy they based the Buffalo Bill Killer on.
And
correct me if I'm wrong.
Also Psycho. Psycho was based on him.
Yeah, him too.
Yeah, and I mean, wow. I mean, to get away with that, and I mean, this is where witchcraft gets involved in it as well. Is he was a practicing Satanist, and I think we need to make distinctions early on.
Yeah,
is practicing witchcraft and Satanism are very separate things.
Yeah, for sure.
And a book I read on the matter by Chris Lake, These Haunted Islands. Mm-hmm. It was published in 1986. Covering for the sake of referencing. He was. What was my point?
Witchcraft.
Yeah, he was apparently a very bad witch, according to other...
Bad as in evil or bad as in poor?
As in he wasn't a very competent witch.
Oh, right, okay.
And I think this is the thing.
Are you not a warlock if you're a guy, or is that something I've picked up from? Is that bullshit?
I don't know, the book certainly discusses it as male and female witches in the Channel Islands, and this is where... a lot of superstition centres from the Channel Islands goes into things like witchcraft.
Because they based Wicker Man on, was it Jersey or Guernsey? They based the island that he goes to in Wicker Man.
I don't know if that is true.
On that, I think maybe.
When you tell people things like this, they do say that sounds like Wicker Man kind of stuff.
Because all that Celtic sort of worshipping the earth type thing.
And we have a lot of Neolithic burial sites, dolmens, which to this day are used for solstice rituals by, I suppose, neo-pagans.
Right.
And in fact, he had claimed to have been part of is it a covenant?
Yeah, covenant
of witches. Yeah. And when he was caught, he claimed that he was on his way to an orgy.
Like a satanic orgy.
Yeah, satanic orgy. So, when they raided his house, they found a lot of books on demonology, and
right. He had a hidden room in his house. I read that.
He had a hidden compartment
cellar,
in a small compartment in the side of his part of the house. It was an area of buildings that were his mother and his father were housed in, and his wife and their children, and then I think he had one child and she had two from a previous marriage, and then he had his own little area where he had this with various other mistresses, from what I understand from the book, who were also affiliated with elements of witchcraft, not saying any way that they were affiliated with his crimes.
Yeah, of course.
But he when they uncovered this secret compartment, it had his familiar, the ceramic
cat, isn't it?
Frog. It was a toad.
It can be. Familiar is like a witch's animal.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and they had he had a ceremonial knife there, and he had like a sacrificial pot for blood.
Fuck.
He admitted that he got into Satanism or witchcraft as well, in a way, in 1940, I think 49, and I mean that's 4 years after the end of the occupation of Jersey by the German forces.
Because Jersey was occupied by the Nazis for how long? A couple of years?
I think like 1941 maybe.
Yeah.
1940.
How long was Jersey occupied by the Nazis? But I mean, any amount of time is sort of not a great amount of time to be occupied by the Nazis.
No.
So he got into it through them. Did they?
No, I believe it was afterwards, because this is certainly what I've read up from Chris Lake's book is witchcraft is very has come from a lot of the Norman influence on the island and Celtic.
Do we have a figure on that, Ron?
The Channel Islands were occupied for 5 years.
Yeah,
5 years.
5 years.
Whoa, so like a lot of the war.
Yeah,
if not all of it, I guess.
Yeah, and and he was alive during that period, and he was I think he was imprisoned for a bit for stealing things from the Germans, but he claimed, and his wife claims in the book that he had actually performed abortions for the German forces, which she was saying was a twisted part of his history that might have affected him psychologically. Because these were on prisoners of war. We had because Hitler was trying to fortify the island. They were using Russian and Polish prisoners of war to build all their underground networks. And
in Jersey,
yeah, I used to work in Jersey war tunnels.
Wow.
And it's pretty scary down there.
I bet.
But it's a very sad history where a lot of people died making those tunnels. And yeah, in the book it claims that he was their abortionist for the German forces who were using and abusing the women there, and that's got to have some kind of effect on him as a character, I guess.
So when they caught him, he went to court. Did he what did he plead insanity? Did he plead guilty? What happened there?
Do you know, from all the details from the book, it doesn't actually mention how he pleaded. It just says was indifferent to his crimes. I know that there was only, I think I have the notes here. There was only a few of the children who actually came forwards about it, being a small community.
Yeah. That's so always the way, though, isn't it? With the
it is, and I mean, he was convicted on very.
Not many people come forward.
No, not many people did come forwards. He was active for 11 years.
Wow. And in that time, they
13
caught him.
charges.
So when they caught him poking out the person's garden, was this during his reign? Do you know what I mean? Was it? He wasn't caught, and then the beast of Jersey appeared. Like the beast of Jersey appeared, and during that time he was caught going through someone's garden.
And this is a time where we have a small outcrop of islands next to Jersey called the Equihos, and there was a gentleman whose name is so Jersey that I couldn't begin to pronounce it, he was a local eccentric as well, and the police had raided his house a number of times in 1 year. I think they've raided it quite a lot, yeah. And he was...
They thought he was the
Yeah,
beast.
they suspected him, and they were obviously from public pressure that they hadn't captured this man. And even though they couldn't find anything, there was such a public fear and outcry and belief that he was the Beast of Jersey that they burnt his house down.
No way.
And he fled Jersey and lived in the Equihos, a small outcrop of islands with a few houses on it. I think for 14 years, even after he was completely cleared from being the Beast.
Jesus.
And he was called the King of the Equihos because he lived there in exile on his own, pretty much
Like a
most of the time.
self-imposed exile.
Yeah, and I mean that's how hard hit the
And
community.
Jersey is how far from the UK? Like not all that far.
No, it's closer to France. It's a few miles from the coast of St Malo, the port of St Malo, and it's you can see Normandy and Brittany from there. It's not that far from England, but it has its own. Like I said, it's self-governing. Mm-hmm. We have our own superstitions, you know, like weird ones where like you can't save a drowning person because if you do, they will wrong you in your lifetime.
What the fuck? No way.
Yeah, and this is what we.
Did anyone ever threaten? I got asked. Did anyone ever threaten to fucking curse you or shit when you were researching the film?
No. Well, you say on that point, Chris Lake. This is the 1980s when witchcraft was still very prominent in Jersey. Mm-hmm. He was. I mean, I've got it quoted here. He was told he was very curseable while researching the book, and he had threats in his through the post anonymously saying that he shouldn't.
Like magic and shit.
Yeah, black magic and white magic, and he had certain members of the community practicing both, saying that he shouldn't.
White magic is good magic.
Yeah, it's healing magic, I presume.
Right.
While black magic would be things like the evil eye, where you would curse other people's livestock, and and they.
I think I could probably take that.
Yeah.
I don't have much livestock. I don't mind if it.
I think in a small community like Jersey, certainly over
it's a big thing, like because they're all farmers
and Ted Paisley claimed that he had Parnell was I'm going to say Paisley, but it's not Ted Paisley, the Beast of Jersey. Yeah. Uncle Ted. Yeah. He claimed to his wife that he had been cursed to the point that he would have no male heirs, and that when they had a miscarriage.
Jesus.
And it was very deep rooted. I don't think it is as much these days.
I don't know that there's been a big thing to tangent slightly. There's been a big thing recently in African football, African League football. Mm-hmm. Any team that is found to have any players or any staff conducting black magic can be fined like millions of dollars.
Wow.
There was an incident, I swear to God, during an African League football match where a player went over to the opposing team's goalpost and leant something up against the goalpost. This is totally true. Leant something up against the goal and did like a little thing, whatever, and then scored like a minute later in like the last minute of extra time. And that's why the African governing body have just banned all witchcraft. Wow. So it's still a thing. It's still a thing that happens.
If you regularly go out to the dolmens at home, these Neolithic burial sites, you will find evidence of pagan practices. We'll call it pagan or witchcraft. And,
like what? Like animal sacrifice? Is that what they do?
I heard rumours about such things, but I've only ever found directly things like sage left.
Right.
I think a lot of it is pretty good natured and all about fertility. And these dolmens are, they claim that they are like womb shaped. They're very
right, because pagans worship the earth. Right?
Yeah, it was very, and they believe it was very connected with the sun cults that were going around Europe at the time. But this is the thing with Jersey and within a closed community is there's a lot of superstition and there's a lot of belief in old traditional magic, and then you had this 17th century Calvinism come in.
What's that?
Calvinism is during the Reformation of the churches. Calvin was he was a big supporter of Luther's practices of reforming the churches, removing Catholic elements. But his philosophy was generally of God's vengeance against mankind for sin, and it was to really impose Christian virtues on every aspect of life, and not just kind of happy, modern day Church of England kind of stuff,
like
but
a proper chastity belt kind of guy.
but very much that like almost this belief that pleasure was a sin, and when you have a very kind of pagan, you go to your healing woman, you're Christian, but you go to a healing woman to heal ailments and stuff. That stuff leads to burning,
and and you worship fertility and stuff. Pagans worship fertility, and that's why we have Easter, because it's a pagan festival. But the Romans stole it to bring the pagans on side.
Everything,
bloody Romans.
The Calvinist mentality really tried to remove a lot of those pagan aspects. And it led to a lot of people being accused of witches and burning. So
there was witch burnings on Jersey as well.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus. I've got this statistics here. It's I'll try and find it. Lutheran. It's something crazy. Like, there's so many people who were essentially burned during this period
for being witches.
Yeah, for being witches.
I mean, one is enough.
85 Channel Islanders were burned at the stake between 1550 and 1661.
That is a lot of people to burn.
There's a lot of people to burn, and a lot of it may have been driven by private interest to do with land, because witches' land was then put up by the state, and
right.
You have to understand that Jersey, at the time was governed, and arguably now is, by a select few families. Oligarch is a perfect way to describe it. And the de Carterettes at the time had a lot of land and were in a position of power, to the point of like family nepotism as well.
Whoa.
And they took a lot of land from these witches. Yeah, there's one case of Marie Grande, or Gerriere, again, people are bothered. Who, she was hung for a witch. So this is not even, so who knows how many were hung. But he actually took her livestock and land, and she was accused of causing the death of people and livestock, and 70 witnesses stood against her, claiming that she'd used the evil eye to curse livestock and kill. And Jersey's a fishing and a farming community.
Yeah, so killing livestock is a big thing.
Yeah, and fishermen were absolutely frightened of witches out at sea, and they would fill bottles of urine and holy water to ward off witches.
We've all been there.
This is, that kind of deep-rooted superstition very much led into the 20th century with people like...
What's it like now? Because you go home a couple of times a year, I guess.
Yeah, well, I haven't been home for a year now, but it might have changed. They might have all gone pagan, but it's
or it's going to be like the Jetsons.
Yeah,
either way.
I think we've kind of there's been very much an English influence over the last 20 years, and with a financial district there, small district, I'll give you that.
It's still a tax haven, isn't it?
Yeah, it's still a tax haven, and more so than ever. I think it's been highly modernised in its in all of these events. From all of these events, it's been quite. It's not commonly believed, but there are people who are still practicing witchcraft, or believe to be practicing witchcraft, or believe themselves to be practicing witchcraft.
So it's still a pervasive part of culture, as well.
Yeah, it is. I think it's not so. It's more of the kind of outback areas of the Channel Islands, and like I would like to emphasise, though I don't believe in such things. I don't condone witchcraft. I don't want to be cursed, mate.
Yeah, for real, I don't want to be cursed. I mean, I feel like if we've sailed into that port, we've already visited it.
Yeah,
hour or however long we've been on.
You have to understand, and I want to make this clear with Jersey. Jersey is very modernised, and it's very, it is like England, but with its own quirks. Like, I imagine areas of the southwest style, which we're in at the moment.
Yeah, we're in the southwest now, and there are those kind of specifically the pagan stuff. There's we're an hour, not even that, from Stonehenge.
Yeah,
which is people go there to celebrate the summer. A lot of people do it ironically, I guess, to just see it. But there is a section of culture that goes down there to celebrate the sun solstice. I believe it is that you go and celebrate at Stonehenge, and there are rituals that people perform there. I can't believe that there aren't other sections of society, in this area that are pretty susceptible to that sort of thinking. You know, and it's I guess it's just an underculture, isn't it? Subculture.
Yeah,
I guess.
I think the modern world is definitely killing off a lot of superstition, maybe for the better. But there's still there's still a presence of witchcraft and these kind of superstitious beliefs. But yeah, I think
it's amazing
that's
that
a breeding ground for a lot of cover up and fear and superstition.
Which is what I was going to go back to. It's amazing that in all this stuff that's been brought out, because it is Ted Heath, isn't it? I just want to double check that it was Ted Heath that was accused of that. I don't want to be naming some other ex-prime minister.
Ted Heath. You
Allegedly.
carry on talking, and I'll.
It's amazing that all this stuff's come out. Maybe more with the Jimmy Savile stuff. You say he was a regular visitor there to commit his heinous crimes. It's amazing that it was Ted Heath that was accused. It's amazing that more of this hasn't come out in the mainstream media over here. That it's just Jimmy Savile did this, and it's never come out that he visited this place. You'd think that people would jump at the excuse to get more of this stuff out into the public eye. Maybe not. Maybe there's still people covering stuff up. Yeah. Maybe there's still an element of not wanting to get found out. Because I remember when that story broke, didn't they find human bones, people's bones, in the grounds of that kid's home, a couple of years ago, or 10 years ago or something like that?
We have to understand that there was about 1,000 vulnerable children who went through that home during its opening.
What was the home again?
Haut,
like he's just fallen
and it was
out
closed 1986, I believe. 1981, the UK government suggested its closure for whatever reason. Maybe it's not connected to this, but maybe the inefficiency. But they initially did find bones, what they believe were bones, and then bizarrely ended up being downgraded to presuming it was coconut shells, and they found traces of human blood in bathtubs, which they suspected was. I mean, there was a little. I think it was like.
What were they doing to find this stuff? They closed down in 1981, and I remember this. 1981 is not in my lifetime, and I remember this hitting the news. When was it, like 2009, 2008?
Yeah, what happened is there was a new chief of police in Jersey who was not from the island, and was digging around because of paedophile rings in the island. And I think there was a few people who blew the whistle of concern from a lot of cases to do with child abuse connected with figures in child services. I mean, there was links to people in child services with the Islington child abuse cases, and I think very much he went looking around, and then when he was not convinced by the very much convinced by the integrity of the police force over in the UK, Jersey, the UK got involved, and it escalated, and then the media got involved, but they did find child bones there, from what I understand, and they found. We were looking at the statistics as well.
It was teeth, wasn't it? As well.
Yeah,
teeth.
I mean, there was teeth. They found. Yeah, here we are. They found 65 teeth and around 100 charred fragments of bones, but there was no conclusive DNA evidence because of the burning. There was also the former head of the children's home who was ousted after his death as a paedophile by I think his adopted daughter, who had said that he'd been molesting and raping her regularly.
Jesus, so it goes all the way at the top.
Yeah,
and then some.
And
it's not like just these rich motherfuckers that rock up because the police force in their pocket. These are pillars of society. People who have just. They're part of the society. They were born there, and they sort of accept it as the norm, I guess, to do this shit. That this is just the way it goes, And you said it was blown open by a guy that wasn't from the island.
Yeah,
it sounds like a really.
It sounds very
creepy,
Wicker Man, doesn't it?
Fucking Wicker Man type situation.
Yeah, it was Operation Rectangle in 2007, who were from 2006 to 2007 were investigating historical child abuse, and. There was a number of whistleblowers until 2008 when the UK government, I think, stepped in with suspected fragments of children's head bones, and a lot of the records from the children's home, from what I understand, were not found because they were in themselves burnt. And the police picked up scent of human remains, but this is the thing as well, is it's right next door to a dolmen, so they suggested that there was perhaps a Neolithic ancient burial site that they had been picked up the scent. So we can't. This is allegations. This is no stated fact of a cover up. But I mean, there is 100 victims received out of court settlements for the abuse. There was only 1,776 statements by 192 alleged victims, and 7 people were successfully prosecuted out of 151 accused abusers.
Fuck.
So, I mean, and the payouts were estimated around £60,000 compensation outside of court.
What, per payoff?
Yeah, it's believed.
Whoa. When was this?
This was during the period of afterwards, after 2008, when they had this case became an international news story.
Mm-hmm.
It's also interesting as well. There's Pie and Mash Productions also did a piece on Haut de la Garenne when it was happening, and they were having, though it was very outside, outsider looking in approach to it. It did expose a lot of private interest for the, we had a chief minister at the time who basically told the head of police that these alleged victims you can't call them victims because it's alleged, and very much there was a vote of no confidence about the police chief, and they basically, his career in the Channel Islands was ruined. He retired straight afterwards because of a believed incompetency. And you're looking at it and you're going, what the incompetency is, the fact that there was so many thousand reported abuses from different members of the community from the 1960s and even recent, 90s to 2000s, there were cases of social workers who were abusing children. My own personal, not direct, but personal experience is the guy who used to come into school to teach us about drugs, who was a policeman, was in fact downloading thousands of pictures of indecent pictures of children, and has now been in prison for it.
Fuck.
And he was a man who was working within the community, working with children, working in schools, and telling us how terrible drugs were. And
it is such a pedophile. It is such a weird section of society. Like, all these upstanding members of society, that it seems to always be child abuse. And I don't know if you've seen that movie Spotlight. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't.
It's about the priests in America, Catholic priests in America, and they explain at one point that it's like, why is it always child? They say, why is it always child abuse? And it's like, because these people are like sort of sexually subnormal.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like their brains don't work in what we deem to be the correct way when it comes to sexual interaction. That's why it's always child abuse. But to have such a network, a concentrated network, because Jersey is not a big place.
No,
to have
isn't.
such a concentrated web of corruption, because it's a tax haven, so there's fiscal corruption there as well. It's absolutely insane. I mean, I think you're really fucking brave for taking it on in the first place, whether you're from there or not.
As a subject maybe now as well.
Yeah.
I was looking at it as well, and I forgot to mention that there was an honorary policeman who was a convicted paedophile in Jersey who molested a mentally impaired 14-year-old girl, and 6 years later became the second highest senior member of the honorary police. Now these people are in positions of power in the community, and that is frightening.
That's so scary.
And then there's not a problem, there's this denial of problem from these politicians and certainly from other upstanding members of the community. There is clearly a problem, and the problem is maybe not an outside police chief raising alarm bells for everyone. So
I mean, life imitating art, it's such an incredible story.
Colin Tilbrook was the guy who was the head of Haut de la Garenne during this period.
Right.
A disgraced headmaster. He was abusing children in the local boys' school in the 1960s, and he went on to abuse his foster daughter. That's right. he would. This is what I've read from accounts from victims online.
Yeah.
Apparently, he would take a pillow around with him in corridors to muffle the screams of his victims, and he had the furnace removed from the property when it was being closed down, which is where they found a lot of the child.
Been burning shit.
Yeah. So I don't want to in any way state that there is a massive cover up to do with child murders, but there is something going on there.
Sounds like
that has never been.
The pot is, all the pieces are in play for something like that to exist there.
Yeah, very.
And we know that it has existed there.
Yeah, and.
Fuck.
I know, and
rather you than me, man.
I know, and it's a beautiful island, and it has a lot of beautiful features, and the superstitious element is also a very beautiful part of Jersey. Yeah. But there is a lot of, I suppose, hidden agendas and hidden tragedy and hidden atrocities going on in the island.
So, what are your plans with this going forward? You said you parked it. You didn't know if it was for a year or for a month or for 10 years or...
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's one of those things where I need to find...
Would it be a documentary or a drama?
You see, for people who don't know, who are listening, my art generally focuses around, very objective history of places mixed in with a subjective opinion on the objective.
Okay.
So it is very documentary format, but it has an air of doubt because, like much of this, it is speculation.
Yeah.
I think I need to really, certainly go back and go through it, have the script consulted through and.
Yeah. Are people willing to talk? Have you gone back
Jersey,
to have you gone back to talk or?
I think it's one of those things you don't discuss. I think you discuss with family members. I don't think you go picking out for victims. I think it's something that when you live in a small community and you've had to spend so many years trying to deal with that and suppress it, I don't think it's wise. It's a hidden part of our history that is known, but it's not talked about a lot. It's not something that is openly discussed. All
for so many reasons.
I mean, and certainly the only references of the Beast of Jersey I've seen, and I know the Jersey community are very, if anyone is listening, is very good at finding the facts on these matters.
Yeah.
From what I remember from the Jersey Museum is there was only really a few books about the Beast of Jersey or a few chapters in books about witchcraft and superstition and murders and atrocities in the island. So, I mean, if anyone listening would like to in any way contribute any information about it, I would be more than happy to.
We'll put links to your work in, and I hear you have an exhibition on right now. We'll put a link into that into the description.
Yeah.
And a contact point, like if you have a Facebook page or something for the flick or for your own one, we'll put that in. It's been an absolute fucking pleasure having you on. It's a really dark subject, but it's so interesting.
Yeah, it was a very important subject to discuss.
Absolutely.
So, thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Toby. Well, we've been thinking out loud. You can follow us on, still not on Twitter because we haven't got around to that, but listen, like, subscribe and share on SoundCloud. Try saying that when you're drunk. Thank you very much. We're back next week.